All right, y'all. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking every single NBA team currently on a tier list, kind of doing my own power rankings for the halfway point of the season. I'll probably do this video one more time before the end of the year, sometime in March or April, but I did it about 2 months ago, about a quarter of the way through the season. We're about halfway through now. I think this is a good time for an update, and then I'll do one more here in a couple months when the playoff picture has really fully taken shape and we're getting close to the end of the year. So before we hop into the video, if y'all haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Help me push towards the 2,000 subscriber mark on the channel. I upload every single day, multiple videos a day on the NBA. I would really appreciate it if y'all do subscribe. Without further ado, let's hop right into it and let's get to ranking. I have these teams randomly ranked. It just goes Eastern Conference team, Western Conference team, and that is pretty much the only rhyme or reason to this list. So we're going to start with the Milwaukee Bucks. I truly believe the Milwaukee Bucks are still an if all goes right team. When I say if all goes right, that means if all goes right, they could win the title, but in all likelihood, they're probably not a serious finals favorite, championship contender type team. But on their best nights, the Bucks absolutely look like a serious contender. When Giannis and Dame are cooking, they are incredible, and they seem to play really well on national television as well this season, which is a big deal for the Bucks. Now, the problem for the Bucks is going to be Chris Middleton. I'm not sure if he'll get moved at the deadline, but he just hasn't been good enough. They don't have that third star, but I mean, overall, after what was, I believe, like a 2-8 start to the season, something along those lines, they've played really good basketball for the last couple months. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They've been really good, and I think they're not quite top tier contender, but they're not that far behind. The Warriors are a play-in-ish team. I don't think they're a serious playoff team at this point, but they are also not a capture the flag team. I'm just not a serious believer that they can actually contend for a title, though. I just don't think they're deep enough. I don't think they're good enough. I'm not even sure they're going to make the playoffs, in all honesty. I'm just not very impressed by them at this point. Defensively, they've been bad. Offensively, they've been worse. They've been really bad for basically 2 months now. After a good start to the year, it's been rough, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better. So, Golden State, sorry. You're not there anymore. The Nets are absolutely capturing the flag. They are right at the bottom of the league at this point, and there's just no real argument about it. They have made move after move, clearly trading Dorian Finney-Smith, trading Dennis Schroeder. A lot of guys not playing games for phantom injury here, phantom injury there. They're not trying to win games, and that's not a surprise. But I mean, they're about to move Cam Johnson pretty soon too, and that will be the final blow to any chance of really winning very many games at all. They are in it to lose it, I guess you could say, instead of in it to win it, and definitely to the bottom of the league. The Rockets. I think the Rockets, as of right now, with the way their team is currently constructed, despite being the 2 seed in the West, I think they are still an if all goes right team. I don't think that as their team is currently constructed, they are a top tier contender, because I worry about the clutch time offense, plain and simple. They don't have that go-to number one scorer who is consistently able to match buckets with another team's top scorer. They have the defense to win a title, and I think they overall have the depth for the most part to win a title as well. Ton of young talent. I just don't know if they have that top tier guy. They're not that far off. One move. I mean, I made a video on it yesterday. If they trade for Zach LaVine, they're a serious title contender. As is, I think if all goes right is probably the right tier for them. And the same can honestly be said for the Knicks. They have 2 absolutely star players in Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson, both of whom are having great years. A lot of talent on the roster, no doubt about it. But it's hard to, again, like, I just think you're at a spot where in an Eastern Conference that clearly has still probably 2 top teams, the Knicks are right there with the Bucks in that second tier. They're very good, but I'd be surprised if they made it out the East and made it to the finals. It's possible. I feel like it's going to take perfection, in all honesty, and they probably, again, are another team that could use one more depth piece. I know Thibodeau likes to play his stars a ton, but they need some depth. The Pelicans are too good to really capture the flag at this point. Like, I just think they're not going to lose enough games for the rest of the season, but they are also not a play-in-ish team at all. They're so far behind the 8 ball at this point with their atrocious start to the season. They have no chance. But I do think as of lately, they're kind of better than the rest of these teams that are going to be in capture the flag just because of getting finally healthy and stuff. Be interested to see what they do at the trade deadline, though, and how they either try to set up for next year or get their team worse so they lose more. Be interested to see what happens with New Orleans. Toronto is also in that lowest tier, obviously. I mean, they're kind of the Pelicans of the East to a certain extent, fully healthy with IQ and Scotty Barnes, guys like that. This isn't a bad team, but again, wouldn't be shocked to see them get a bit worse at the deadline by dealing away some role players. And look, I think they have a bright future. That future is not right now. They are not even close to a play-in team, in my opinion. And I think they still deserve to be going in that lowest tier. Same thing with Utah. We got a lot of tanking teams in a row, but Utah is right one of the 2 worst teams in the league. Besides Larry Markkinen, there's not a ton of exciting stuff about Utah now. Bryce Sensabaugh showing some flashes. They do have a lot of trade pieces. Walker Kessler's having an elite year. Be interested as well to see what happens with them at the deadline, just because they're going to make moves. What those moves are going to be, I really don't know. But I did like their move for the Phoenix unprotected 2031 first round pick last week. I thought that was an interesting and a pretty good move. The Bulls are still a play-in-ish team, despite the fact that the Bulls have struggled massively as of late. They are 19 and 27, and yet they are in that 10 seed in the East. I mean, the East is just so weak once you get past the top 9 teams, that the Bulls are seriously still, they're in the play-in position right now. They suck. They should be getting worse. They should trade Levine. They should trade Vucevic. They should trade Patrick Williams and Lonzo Ball and kind of just cut ties and get bad, accept it. But they're not going to. It doesn't seem like they never have. I don't understand why. But hey, Chicago is still in the play-in right now, despite being a pretty bad team. I just can't put them in the lowest tier. The Lakers are an absolute playoff team. I honestly think they're one piece away from being an if all goes right to even maybe a contender team. Their defense has been much better recently. I like the move for Dorian Finney-Smith, and they still have real assets to make moves. They could use another big. They could use another shot creating guard. If they can add a couple pieces though, without hurting their roster significantly in doing so, they could very quickly become a very interesting team. But as of right now, they're not quite there. Absolutely looking like a playoff team though. They've played really well lately. Detroit Pistons are still a play-in-ish team as well. They're not bad. They're having a much improved season. There's a lack of consistency there still to a certain extent, but they are the 6th seed. I mean, I think some people would make the argument they are a legit playoff team. I'm not totally sure they're there quite yet. They're playing like it recently, but they feel more play-in to me. I wouldn't be surprised if they slip down to 7 or 8, although they might stay at 6. They're playing well. They deserve credit. The Magic have struggled recently. I think play-in is just probably a fair spot for the Pistons, and you could argue a tier higher if you wanted to. The Portland Trail Blazers are obviously capturing the flag as well. Now, they've won a bunch of games in a row recently until today as I record this video, when they lost to OKC, which is not a bad loss, but they'd won like 4 games in a row before that. I think they're mismanaging their young players. I made a video on that a couple days ago as well. But they're not going to be awful in the future, but they're certainly not very good right now. Still definitely in more of tank mode for that team. No chance of the play-in whatsoever, so definitely in that lowest tier. The Cavs are still, despite recent struggles, a contender. Now, I get they've lost 3 games in a row and 5 of their last 10. Things have gotten a lot worse for Cleveland recently, and that can be explained by a couple factors. And actually, by the time I'll see this video, probably will have dropped a video today talking about Cleveland's recent struggles and if there's cause for panic. I don't totally think so, though, to be honest. I still think they're serious contenders, and they're just kind of hitting a rough spot. It happens to every team. I mean, they've looked awesome this year. It's hard to take away from a team that has been this good offensively all year and is still very solid defensively with 2 elite bigs that play together really well as well. They're still a serious contender to me. I know they've struggled recently, but it's going to take more than a struggle for about a week to really take the Cavs out of that top spot for right now. The Timberwolves, I still think, are a playoff team. I get that the stats say they're a play-in team. The West is just so much better than the East that I feel like I'm going to have like 9 or 10 Western Conference teams, or at least like 8 or 9 in playoff team or higher. Whereas with the East, there's like 5 or 6 that are playoff team or higher, just because of the talent of these teams. Like if the Timberwolves were in the West or were in the East, they'd be fighting for the 5 seed right now. Instead, they're like 7, 8, 9. But look, I still think they're going to make the playoffs. DiVincenzo being hurt sucks, but I think they're good enough to where it's hard to argue they're not a playoff team. Probably, if all things, I mean, they might end up in the play-in, but I'm still putting them a tier above right now. A squad like the Warriors for sure. The Celtics are obviously still championship contenders. Another team that has struggled recently. I think they've lost like something along the lines of 8 of their last 17 games, somewhere around there, but they're still the 2nd seed in the East. They're the defending champions, and if they're healthy, they're still going to be right up there with the best of the best. I think probably co-favorites with the Thunder still to win the title realistically, and I think they're contenders. Now, Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets, I do actually believe they are my final team in the top tier of contenders right now. They've been so good recently. Jokic has been so dominant offensively, besides admittedly a bad loss to Minnesota a couple days ago. But besides that, they've been awesome recently. They're 28 and 17, have played great basketball for a while. Russell Westbrook's having a career resurgence. Jokic has been incredible. Guys like Jamal Murray playing better as of late. MPJ having a great year. Aaron Gordon having a great year. Certain amounts of development from guys like Christian Brown and Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther. And honestly, DeAndre Jordan hasn't been terrible as a backup center either recently. I think they're serious contenders. I really do. They don't match up well against Minnesota, but any other team in the West, I think they could probably beat them, to be honest, in the right series anyway. Philadelphia is still somehow a play-in-ish team. Despite a absolute year from hell, they're still not their game out of the play-in, with Embiid potentially theoretically coming back soon. They're not capturing the flag. Should they be? You could make the argument, considering their pick is top 6 protected, but they're not going to, as long as there's a chance that Embiid is going to come back and they might potentially be more competitive than expected. And you know what? We'll see what happens. But for me personally, they can't go in that lowest tier. Despite all their struggles, they're only a game out of the play-in, and just like the Bulls, if the Bulls are in the play-in-ish tier, so are the Sixers. The Thunder are absolutely championship contenders, and in all honesty, probably championship favorites right now. When healthy with Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren, this team might be unbeatable. They've been so good this season across the board. There's just no way in my mind that you can really argue against them being probably championship favorites. They've been so good, and they look, I mean, Shea is right there at the top of the MVP race, obviously, having an incredible year. Like, this is just one of those situations where they're playing so good, it's not even a debate. They could honestly be argued in a tier of their own. The Hornets have been atrocious recently, really for the last couple months after a decent-ish start to the season, but they have had a ton of injuries. I just don't think they're ready to win in general. Mark Williams is showing some growth as of late. LaMelo's super talented. Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller are decent secondary pieces, but they just haven't put it together to be really, truly competitive at all the last couple of years. So still in that lowest tier. The Grizzlies are in, if all goes right. They're not perfect, but they're a good team, and they're very, very good defensively. They're great in transition, best transition team in the league by far. Ja has been played better as of late. Jaren's having a good year. Desmond Bane, would like to see him be a little closer to what he was maybe 2 years ago, but still talented player, and they have a ton of depth, a lot of good depth pieces on that team. They're well coached by Taylor Jenkins. I like the Grizzlies. I think they're probably not going to win the title, but they're not that far off. Just like the Rockets, things could go their way for sure. And they have some assets to make some moves as well if they wanted to be one of those dark horse teams at the deadline, doing more than we expect. The Wizards are right at the bottom of the league. They're the worst team in basketball. I don't even think I really needed to cover it in all honesty. They're probably going to make some moves at the deadline to get even worse. Alex Sarr is showing some flashes of improvement. Bilal Coulibaly is an interesting prospect who hasn't shot the three ball well this year. They might have a couple other interesting guys in Bub Carrington, Jordan Poole, who knows, some guys like that. But in general, come on, they're the worst team in the league. That's a no-brainer. The Mavs, I still think the Mavs are a playoff team. I understand that the numbers say the Mavs are a play-in-ish team, and maybe you call me biased, but they still have a net rating of above 3 for the season. And look, the reason they've been so rough as of late, they were 19-10 even after a 5-7 start to the season. They'd won 14 of their last 17 games before Luka got injured on Christmas. And since then, they obviously are 5-12 without Luka, which is bad. But there is apparently optimism that he's going to be back before the All-Star break, which means we might see him back in the next couple weeks. As long as they can hang out around 500, I think they'll find a way to be a playoff team. Are they going to be a top 6 seed? It's looking tough, but again, they're 46 games in. They've got 36 left. It's possible. We'll see what happens. Hopefully Luka's back soon. And if he is, I still think they're a playoff team, but I get that the injuries have knocked them down a peg. The Magic, a couple weeks ago, they would have been playoff team for sure. A couple months ago, they might have been, if all goes right. It's injury related, but it's also the fact that they're just not that great with just Paulo Banchero. Feel like they need both Franz and Paulo to truly be good. They have struggled since Paulo Banchero got back, in all honesty. He has not been a huge positive for the team the way that I thought he would be. And they've struggled a lot as of late, have definitely slipped down the standings. They're not having a horrible year. They're still 7th in the East, but they're 3-7 in their last 10 games. They got a negative net rating now. They're just really struggling offensively. I just don't think they're that good, and I think they're playing-ish. So are the Spurs. The Spurs are still a little too far away. They might potentially squeak into the play-in, but in all honesty, I think the Warriors and the Spurs are probably going to be the two teams in the West that missed the play-in, if I had to guess. They're the two teams in position 2 right now, and I think they're probably the two worst of these top 12 squads. But they're not far off. They have a chance to make the play-in. They're showing a lot of young growth. Jeremy Sohan's been a little better. I think he's had some nice impactful moments recently. Wemby's been great, as of course you would expect him to be. A lot of talent on that team. Stephon Castle's having a good year, showing a lot of growth as well. Like, they're going to be good, but they're not quite there yet. I think that's the right tier for them. The Clippers are also a playoff team, especially with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard makes them one piece away if all goes right type team. And that sounds like a lot to say, but a healthy Kawhi, which is a big ask, will he stay healthy in the playoffs? Probably not. If he does, is there a serious chance that they make a run in the Western Conference? I actually think so. They're not that far away from being a tier up from here. And because I do believe, if all goes right, there is an outside chance for this team to win a title, or at least make the finals. It's an outside chance. But I think there's an outside chance for the Lakers if they make a move, an outside chance for the Timberwolves if they find some things out, outside chance for the Mavs. Like, it's possible. I unlikely. That's why I'm not even in that top second highest tier, but I think this is right. The Hawks feel like a playoff team to me, but the stats say they're not. And in all honesty, I think I'm only putting 5 Eastern Conference teams in playoff team or higher because there's just not enough consistency with the Hawks. They've lost 4 games in a row. They do a lot of good and then they do a lot of bad. There's just there are moments where you're like, oh, this team's gonna be a really tough out in the playoffs. They play defense, they're switchable, they're versatile. Trae Young is really well surrounded with a lot of size and switchability and versatility of the defensive end of the court, and he's been an incredible playmaker. But at times the efficiency can be questionable. I don't think they have elite centers. They're not there. They're not bad, but they're not great. And I think they got to go in the play-in. They've struggled recently as well, so they're going to go in that tier as well. The Kings, I need a little more proof that the Doug Christie system is working. Like, it's been good. They've shown a lot of growth. They're playing faster. They're playing better defense, a little bit more unselfish. A lot to like as a whole. They won their first, I think 10 of their first 12 games without Mike Brown, but they've lost a couple in a row. I think it might have, to a certain extent anyway, been a bit of a hot stretch with a team that's been inspired under Doug Christie. I'm not certain about the sustainability of this run though, and that's the honest truth. Could be wrong. Think I'm going play-in still for the Kings. The Heat, if Jimmy doesn't get traded and comes back and actually tries to play and plays like he cares, then they will move up a tier. They will be a playoff team. As is, there is so much uncertainty with that team, so much inconsistency and struggle with that team. I can't not put them Playinish right now. They just haven't been impressive. They haven't been consistent. There's just not a ton to like. The Phoenix Suns are also probably going Playinish for me, to be honest. Like, as much as they've been promising recently, 2 games in a row, 7 of the last 10, playing better. Still got a negative net rating, still have some question marks in terms of big men, still have some question marks instead of health, in terms of health, obviously, as well, because you never know what's going to happen. And obviously there's rumors about them getting Jimmy Butler, rumors about them doing other things with their assets. They traded their super valuable pick from 2031 to the Jazz for 3 lower, guaranteed to be mediocre type firsts. They're not quite to the point where I think they're a surefire playoff team yet, but they've shown progress as of late, and I think it's possible that continues. It'll be interesting to see. And then you got the Pacers, who, despite a rough start to the season, are absolutely a playoff team. They've just been really solid as a whole for the last basically month plus at this point. After really struggling out the gate, they've figured it out offensively. Tyrese Halliburton's played a lot better. They're better when Tyrese Halliburton scores the ball a lot as well. They're a promising team playing well. I think they're a playoff team for sure. Yes, I could probably move a couple of these play-in teams up into playoff teams, but I'm not going to. These are the teams that I'm just not as trusting of that are in that tier. I feel like the Suns are probably the team that I would move up the first, though, if I was going to move a team up, but I'm not there yet with their health, with their depth, with their deadline moves. Just like, I don't know if Nick Richards is enough of a solution. It'll be interesting to see how things get sustained over the next month or 2 of the season. But thought I'd drop y'all an updated tier list right now for power ranking the NBA. I hope y'all did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'll be back with more NBA content very, very soon, and I appreciate y'all. Peace.